Hi everyone, Robin here again with Consider the Wonders. I am so excited because today we are creating an itinerary for our trip. We have been doing everything up to this point to lead to right now. So I'm just so excited. We are gonna jump in. But before we do that, I want you to make sure that you have how many days you are going to be at this certain park that you're planning for, plus your to-do list and your food list. If you haven't done those things already, I want to encourage you to go back a couple of videos and get those things done, because having those things in mind already is going to make this process a lot faster. If you need some help to just sort of keep all of those things and that information together, you can head over to our website, considerthewonders.com, and download our free national park travel planning guide, and that will help you with all of this. So let's jump in. So I want to use our Yellowstone National Park list that we made a couple of videos ago to help us with this itinerary creating process. Large national parks are some of the hardest ones to create itineraries for, just because there are so many options and only so many days that you're going to be at the park, so it can be kind of limiting. We'll also take a look at an easier, just like 1 day itinerary after we're finished with our Yellowstone creation. Okay, so looking at our list, we know for sure that we want to go to Old Faithful. If you're going to Yellowstone, that's probably number one on your list because it's so iconic. You should definitely go there if you are planning to go to Yellowstone. It's amazing. So we know that we want to go there, and we also know where it's located. It is in like this kind of south central, like slightly west area of the park. So what we want to do is that we know that we want to go there. So we also want to look for things that are near Old Faithful. We can see from the rest of our list that Grand Prismatic is near Old Faithful, Fairy Falls, and Mystic Falls are all close to Old Faithful. They're all kind of over on that side of the park. And so those are some really good options to create our itinerary for the day with things being so close to one another. Now, those are 4 different activities, and while 4 things may not seem like a lot, or maybe it does seem like a lot, you really have to figure out what type of activity it is in order to know if you have enough time to do it during the day, and also if you're gonna have just enough energy really to do it in that day. So let's take a look at that. I like to rate activities as like easy, moderate, and then like a strenuous activity to know whether or not I feel like I can fit things into my day. If I'm doing like a really strenuous activity, I don't know that I want to do like 5 other strenuous activities that day, or if I want to do like a couple of easy things for the rest of the day. So if that helps you be able to do that, then that's just something that I personally like to do. So Old Faithful is what I would consider to be an easy activity. You are basically going to the visitor center that's there, and just behind that is the Old Faithful viewing, where they have like the times that it goes off, or the estimated times that it goes off. There's not really a lot of physical activity that has to happen with that. The area all around it is pretty much paved, and so it's completely accessible. Additionally, there is an observation point trail that actually goes off of the paved area and onto like some boardwalks. And it's a trail that you can go on that goes behind Old Faithful. You can actually get a different view of the geyser from there. And if you are planning on doing that, you of course just want to make sure that you allow enough time to do that as well. And speaking of time, you're probably going to want to plan at least 2 hours for this activity. mostly because of the parking. So there's a very large parking lot for this activity. However, there are also so many people that want to go see it every day that there are a lot of cars. So you just need to give yourself a good amount of time in order to do this activity. So 2 hours is a safe bet. Okay, so next let's talk about the Grand Prismatic Spring. Did I say that right? Grand Prismatic Spring. This is another easy activity. This is going to be a short boardwalk hike. I would allot about 1 hour for this area. Okay, so we've talked about two different things. We've talked about Old Faithful and we've talked about the Grand Prismatic, and we figured out how much time we need for each of those things. So whatever park you are planning for, you're going to want to look up the activities that are close to one another, and then you're going to want to look at how much time each of those activities is going to take for you. So we're going to continue with our Yellowstone example and go to Fairy Falls. So I would consider this to be a moderate hike. It is over 6 miles long, so that immediately just makes it a moderate hike for sure. The actual elevation gain and the hike itself isn't too strenuous, so that's why I would consider it to be a moderate hike. I would say that this is going to take you 4 hours or so. And lastly, I want to talk about Mystic Falls. So this is another waterfall hike. I love waterfalls, and there are plenty to choose from at Yellowstone, and this is another really good one. It's just a 2-mile hike. I would say that it's like an easy to moderate hike. It would be about 2 hours within the area, and that's going to include parking, as this again is another highly enjoyed area, and so parking can sometimes be an issue. Okay, so those are the 4 activities that we wanted to look at within Yellowstone National Park. Whatever park you are planning for, just make sure that you have created that list of activities and locations together so that you can create your itinerary just like we have. So now that you know how long you're going to need for each activity, we need to look at where they are actually at specifically so that we can decide which one we want to do first. So I tend to decide what things I want to do first based on 2 things. So the first one is sometimes I like to go to the furthest thing that's away from me, and I like to work my way back. So if I'm camping at Yellowstone National Park, like maybe I'm camping at Madison, and I wanted to go to the furthest place and work my way back, I would start at Old Faithful, and then I would go over to Grand Prismatic, Fairy Falls, and then Mystic Falls, and then I would be back at my camper. So you can do it like that, or you might want to choose the other option is to start with the most challenging thing, especially if you're going to do a lot of hiking that day. Sometimes doing the hardest hike first when your legs are the freshest is always the best thing. So in that case, you would want to go over to Fairy Falls first, maybe then go over to Grand Prismatic, look at that, go to Mystic Falls, and then head down to Old Faithful and do that last. It all depends on just what you want to do, your preferences, but those are typically the 2 ways that I try to decide what I want to do and how I want to plan out my day. Okay, so we've got the order of the activities that we want to do, and now we want to look at food, because everybody needs to eat during the day, so we need to figure that out as well. So where are you going to be at breakfast? Do you need to be somewhere early that morning based on the activity that you've chosen to do first? Sometimes if you're at a park, you may have like a scheduled thing that you have to get to because you're going on a tour or there's a timed entry, and so you have to be at the park or at this certain activity at a certain time. So if it's really early, then you need to decide what you're going to do for breakfast. Maybe it's just a grab and go granola bar or something like that. Say I'm going to Yellowstone like we're planning for, and I've decided that I'm going to go from the furthest place and then work my way back to my camper. So I'm going to go to Old Faithful first. Well, it doesn't really matter what time I get there, although I will say the earlier the better, because there will just be less people in the parking lot. You'll probably be able to find a parking space a little bit easier if you go earlier. But you don't necessarily have to be there at a certain time, but you just want to get there really to give yourself enough time to do all of the other things during the day. Now, as far as lunch goes, this can be the most challenging meal of the day. I know for me and my family, oftentimes we are on a hiking trail when it is lunchtime. That is very typical for us. And so we almost always pack a lunch with us before we leave for the day. If you haven't packed your lunch, then you just want to make sure that you know where you're going to be at lunchtime or around lunchtime, and then know what is available to you within the park that day. And you should already know that, as we've talked about what we are going to eat at the park in another video. So you're just going to want to refer to that list and look for something that is in the same area that you are in for lunch. And of course, we need to talk about dinner. Typically for us, whenever we're at the parks, we usually try to be sure that we are done with all of our activities for the day before dinner. Especially if we're camping, we always like to go back to our campsite and eat dinner. There might be a restaurant right outside the park that maybe you want to go to that you found while you were looking at different things that you would like to eat while you were planning earlier. And so maybe you're going to go try that for dinner that night. So we have tentatively decided on what we're going to do and what we're going to eat while we are at the park for that day. So we're just going to plug everything in and make sure that everything works. We're going to time it all out. For my purposes for planning for Yellowstone, like we're doing, I'm going to go to the furthest place and work my way back. So I'm going to start at Old Faithful, and I've decided that I'm going to try to get there around 9 a.m. And we know that it's probably going to take us about 2 hours to do that. So I've gotten there at 9 a.m. I've parked, I've seen everything, I've gone on the observation trail, and now I'm going to leave and I'm going to go over to the Grand Prismatic and Fairy Falls. By the time I get there, it's probably 11:30. I've walked around the Grand Prismatic, which is another hour or so. So possibly at this point, you can, if you've packed your lunch, you can eat lunch while you're there. Not really on the boardwalk at the Grand Prismatic. There's no room there, but somewhere right around there. Maybe you decided that while you were at Old Faithful and you were at the visitor center that you were just going to eat lunch there before you left. Either way, you're going to eat lunch around that time, and then you're going to head over to Fairy Falls and go on that trail. So that trail is going to take you about 4 hours or so, maybe more, maybe less, depending on how quickly you hike. But it's probably going to be very late afternoon, 3-4 o'clock by the time you're finished with this trail. Then if you'd like, you're going to hop in your car and head over to Mystic Falls. This is going to take another 2 hours for you to do that. So it's going to be 6 or 7 o'clock at that point. Now, let's pause here because you might be thinking, okay, 6 or 7 o'clock. Yeah, I'm done. Like, I don't want to be out there past that time, or I'm gonna be ready to eat dinner at that point, or possibly, depending on what time of the year it is, it might already be dark at that point, and you certainly don't want to be out on the trail then. So you may decide, I am going to skip Mystic Falls, or just put it on a different day on my itinerary. And I'm gonna go back to my camper at this point because I'm ready to be done. Or if maybe Fairy Falls didn't take you as long as you thought, you should have plenty of time to be able to do Mystic Falls, get off the trail, and then go grab dinner at that restaurant that you wanted to check out that's right outside the park. Now, Yellowstone is a multi-day park, but of course there are other parks that are just one day, and you can pretty much do everything at the park in one day. But all of the steps that we've taken to do Yellowstone's itinerary are the same steps that we would do if we were creating for a smaller park. So let's take, for instance, Bandelier National Monument. It is a great national park in New Mexico. They have options for camping, but you can also stay like somewhere maybe in Santa Fe. It's not too far from there. So it's definitely got some options in terms of like accommodations as well as food options and activities. So it's a good park to go to. If you were gonna plan for a one-day park like Bandelier, then you would look for the activities that you would want to do. So if it were me, I would want to go to the cliff dwellings that are there, also to the alcove house, and possibly go on the trail to the waterfall. Those are 3 great activities that you would want to do if you had time during your day, depending on how much time you had. You may be just passing through on this particular park, and so you might only have a few hours. In terms of how this park is laid out, the visitor center is right there at the very central parking area, and you can actually get on the trails straight from there. So that makes it really nice, and just being able to park once and then being able to go to the other areas and activities within the park. So I would start on the Pueblo Loop Trail that goes to the cliff dwellings in this area. That's gonna take you 1 to 2 hours, depending on, again, how fast you hike. And that actually is going to lead you over to the alcove house. The trails sort of meet up together, so you can actually do those at the same time. And that's probably gonna tackle in another hour for you at least to go over and do that. And then after I did that, I would want to go and see if I could go to the waterfall and hike on that trail. It's about 1.5 miles long, so that could take some time as well, but you should have plenty of time during your day in order to do those 3 activities. Since you have parked at a central location and everything sort of leaves from that area that you're gonna be doing, that makes food a lot easier, especially lunch, because you're going to be coming back to the same place that you were when you started. And so you can either pack a lunch, maybe eat at the picnic area that's near there, or you could possibly get something to eat at the visitor center or someplace right around there. And of course, then for dinner, you can always head over to Santa Fe or one of the other towns that's really close to there and get something to eat. So with those one-day parks, while I think that they are a lot easier to be able to plan your day for, it is still essential for you to be able to know the amount of time that you have there, and then what you want to do and what your food options are while you're there. In our National Park Travel Planning Guide, we have some itinerary pages to help you get started organizing each of your days that you're going to be at the parks. So I hope that you'll go and grab that, and I hope that it's helpful for you. I know for me personally, it is essential for me to plan out each of my days at the parks, because there are oftentimes so many things that I want to do, and I want to make sure that I get to do all of the things that I want to do. So if I plan everything out, then I know that most likely I'm going to get to do all of those things, and I'm not going to miss all of the great, beautiful, amazing things to see that the park that I'm going to has to offer. And so I hope that this has been helpful to you. If you have any questions, please just put that down in the comments. I'll be happy to respond to that. Or you can email me at considerthewonders@gmail.com. Next, we are going to be talking about packing, because sometimes with certain activities, you need certain things. So we are going to look at that in the next video. I'll see you there.